Welcome to Texas PTA's Extra Credit course, The Power Behind the Microphone, an introduction to preparing to be a public speaker. Mark Twain, known for being a great orator and author, once said, "There are only two types of speakers in the world, the nervous and the liars." We aren't going to try to prove him wrong today, but we are going to provide you with some tips and tricks to put you on the path to be successful as a public speaker. Let's get started. One of William Shakespeare's often quoted lines is from the play As You Like It, where it is part of a long speech that analyzes the various periods of a man's life. However, the portion you are about to hear often stands on its own. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. As a mere player with entrances and exits, you can count on having to say a few lines here and there, which means that you really have no option but to be a public speaker. The real issue at hand is how comfortable we can help you be. There is great power behind the microphone. The power to amplify, to advocate, to empower, and to engage. In PTA, you can do all of those and more. Let's look at how we can use the analogy of a theater to help you be more comfortable with a microphone in your hand. First, there's the house, where we find the audience. Then there are the wings. It is in the wings where a lot of prep work takes place. Next, there is center stage, where the magic of the theater comes together. Lastly, we have the notes. While this isn't a physical part of the theater, it is critical to any good production. Viola Spolin describes the audience as the most revered member of the theater. Without an audience, there is no theater. It is the same for a public speaker. With no public, it seems like all you are is a talker. So it is rare for speakers to speak to an empty room or a blank camera eye. Sometimes it is necessary, but when you can have an audience, the presentation or performance, as Ms. Spolin says, is meaningful for both the entire audience and the speaker themselves. Goal 1 is to find your audience. Often, we will find that audience in the house of the theater. In this part, we want to think about the needs of both the audience and the speaker. Let's start with the audience itself. In Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, Brené reveals the importance of truly understanding your audience as well as the language that is being used to describe them. Early in Brené's speaking career, she was booked for a conference that was described to her as C-level participants. In her head, she heard C-level, S-E-A level participants, which she interpreted to be down-to-earth, just everyday people. When she peeked through the curtain moments before she was scheduled to speak and saw a room full of dark suits, she had a moment of feeling completely unprepared. Well, that certainly won't happen to her again, and it doesn't have to happen to you. As a PTA leader, you are likely to be called on to speak to a variety of groups, including parents, students, teachers, principals, or Board of Trustee members. Each group would need to be approached differently, and it is a huge benefit to you to ask questions about their knowledge level of your topic. This will help you determine exactly what you will talk about. Your host is going to be your guide for all things about the audience, so be sure to get that person's number so that you can reach out when other important questions arise. It is also crucial to know when you are on the agenda for the day. AndMeetings.com explains in a recent article when the best times and the worst times are to hold productive meetings and training sessions. They boil it down to midweek between 10 and 11:30 in the morning, mid-morning, or between 2:30 and 4 in the afternoon, mid-afternoon, as the best times. Just think of meetings happening in the mids. Of course, as a guest speaker, the schedule could be completely out of your control. But if you know you're arriving on stage after the audience just had lunch or has already sat through hours of presentations, you will be able to incorporate a way to put energy and excitement back into the room. This can be done through your presentation or by working in a warm-up activity before you jump into the main portion of your presentation. Let's think about the actual physical space that the audience is sitting in and how that impacts the speaker. While it doesn't really matter to you what type of chair they are sitting in, it is important to you to find out how those chairs are placed and where you as the speaker or presenter are expected to be. By knowing if you are on a stage or on the floor, if the chairs are lined up with no aisle or with the center one, or if you are above, level, or below the audience, you can visualize the presentation beforehand and think through how you could interact with your audience best. Another important item to know when you're thinking of the setting of your presentation is how will the audience hear you? There's a big difference between having the freedom of a wireless microphone and being tied to a corded one. There's also a difference between the expectation that you will stand behind a podium to use a stationary microphone and being able to walk around the space. These tiny details need to be known in advance, so when you enter the wings of your presentation, you will be able to prepare adequately. The wings is where you go to get ready for your big entrance. As we continue our metaphor of public speaking as theater, let's lean into William Defoe's advice. You really do have to be ready for just about anything. First, the wings is where you want to practice, practice, practice. It's not memorization per se, but it is taking the time to know the material thoroughly, think through potential questions the audience may have, and check on some words or phrases that might not just roll off your tongue. It has been said that Winston Churchill spent an hour preparing for every minute of his speech. When you aren't comfortable with a topic, it shows, but this is something that you can prevent simply by working on your presentation a bit each day. As part of the preparation for a presentation or speech, it is important to make sure you are literally comfortable in your own shoes. Finding out that the expectation for your dress from your host is a good first step, but ultimately, whatever you decide to wear from your head to your toes needs to be something that helps you feel like yourself. The last thing you want to be is distracted by an ill-fitting outfit or shoe. It is important to work through parts of your presentation while wearing your chosen wardrobe to see how it works instead of deciding on the day of and be left with very little in the closet from which to choose. As a public speaker, you get to set the tone for your presentation. You can impact the energy level of the room by bringing in the energy you want your audience to have. And this can change throughout your talk. Be mindful of when you want your audience to be feeling positive or sensitive to a situation. This can be done throughout your presentation, but it is imperative that these changes in tone are pre-planned. You will need to practice or be able to have something embedded into the presentation that reminds you or affects the audience so you get the emotion you want and need. Consider whether tone of voice, a facial gesture, or body language is the best way to continue to bring your audience along on your ride. There are many items that you can bring along to help you. Create a toolkit to hold everything you can think of that you will need. Some of these items might just fit in perfectly. A theater production often has props and prop masters hidden in the wings. You too can have your own props, literally, if that is what you need. You could also have a slide deck or 3x5 cards. If you need to stand behind something and a podium isn't provided, bring something with you that will serve that purpose. Your toolkit can be filled with emergency items as well, like another copy of the full presentation, printed out, maybe even scripted. You could have a set of flats or extra shoelaces, maybe a backup pair of earrings or a lucky penny. Whatever it is that you think could help you through a presentation is good to have accessible the day of your event. By heading off the "oh no's," you can focus on where you are and how you can use the power of the microphone. One last thing to take care of while you're in the wings, you. Go ahead and take care of bio breaks, makeup touch-ups, your internal pep talk, and personal energizer in the last 15 minutes before making your big entrance. Center stage is the last part of the theater we are going to focus on today. This is where the theater magic happens, even if we can't all arrive on stage by bubble like Glinda. It is where you get to show off everything that you have prepared and wow your audience. Before we get too far into the moment you have been waiting for, the presentation, don't forget about the time you took to prepare that toolkit. Get what you need out of it. Do you have your water? What about the backup script? Do you need the timer? Remember, you spent time setting yourself up for success. Take advantage of it before you begin. Okay, now, big breath. It is okay to be nervous. Mark Twain said we would be, after all. What you don't want is for those nerves to make you scared. Having a mindset that you can and will do a good job is important. You might even consider visualizing the entire presentation from the beginning to the end. Watch each slide go by, or physically touch your props as you think through the presentation. This is similar to how a downhill skier will visualize each and every turn on a course in their mind's eye before they ever go on a run. Seeing yourself being successful puts you on that path. In an Inc.com article, journalist Betsy Mickle spoke with Simon Sinek about a bit of magic that he noticed in regards to professional athletes. These athletes are often interviewed prior to competing or in between rounds of a competition. At these moments, the interviewers seem to focus on just one thing, and they ask the athlete, "Are you nervous?" It turns out that the vast majority of the time, these athletes respond, "No, I'm excited." Sinek, the face behind one of the most watched TED Talks of all time, and who still admits to getting the jitters before some of his talks, noted that our bodies respond to excitement and nervousness the same, but that if we take the opportunity to tell ourselves that we are excited, we can retrain our thinking processes and put ourselves in a mindset that is up for a challenge, instead of letting yourself succumb to derailing emotions. When the time comes to grab the microphone, remember you are the one in charge of telling the story. You have the power of the microphone. Set the stage. Bring your audience in. Do they need a quick pick-me-up? Do you need to be extra energetic so that they will follow along? Don't forget what you learned and developed in your pre-work, but also read the room. Flexibility is key. Welcome the audience into your story in whichever way is most helpful. Once the stage has been set, you enter storyteller mode. Personalizing and sharing experiences helps to bring the audience along. If need be, fall back to the key elements of a story and start at the beginning. What did you do first? Transition to the middle, what kept you involved, and then wrap it all up with a solid ending. What are you doing now, or where do you see everything headed? You could also take advantage of some of the tricks we were taught early about answering the 5 W questions. You remember those, right? Use who, what, where, why, and when to frame your discussion. The key ingredient is sharing your experience and allowing the audience to connect with you as you explore where your passion lies or how someone can come along beside you on the journey. It is your story. Connect the dots for and with your audience. And most importantly, have fun along the way, and don't forget to take a bow. As the applause fades away, it is important to think about next time. Enter the world of notes. Kevin Bacon describes a good director as one who provides an environment designed to provide encouragement for an actor to fly. How does that happen exactly? If you have ever been part of a rehearsal for a stage show, you have most likely seen this unfold as the director and assistant director provide the actors with notes. These notes are not typically in the style of love notes, warm and fuzzy and full of feel-good moments. Rather, they can be harsh reminders of things that have been reviewed before or an idea that just popped into the director's head that they would like to try, which could change everything. Director's notes remind me of the challenge networks Adam Grant describes in his book, Think Again. These networks are described as groups of disagreeable people who push you to become better and better. Grant says we learn more from people who challenge our thought process than those who affirm our conclusions. So after you've had that big presentation and your biggest cheerleaders have built you up, be sure to check in with another group, your challenge group. Let them help you develop even stronger presentation skills as you continue to discover how all the world's a stage. Inevitably, we will find ourselves with a microphone at some point. It is important to remember, know your audience and all the nuances within it. Take time to prepare, maybe not an hour for every minute like Winston Churchill, but more than just throwing something together and winging it. Use the power of the microphone to share your story, filling in all of the gaps. And lastly, find the people who want to see you be at and even better than you are right now at what you are working to accomplish. To become more familiar with the topics in this presentation, you may want to check into these articles. This slide is also available as a PDF at texaspta.org/leadership. Thank you for attending The Power Behind the Microphone. To learn more about public speaking as well as many other leadership skills, check out our full resource library at texaspta.org/leadership.